Krunker.io rose in popularity for many reasons. From its slide hopping, to its trading, to its community, there was a lot going for this browser game. Ultimately, now the game goes with little updates, dwindling servers, and a massive hacker problem. Not only have the developers given up on Krunker, but so has the 150 million unique users. How did Krunker go from an innovative browser game with huge potential for mapping, movement, and competitive, to just another pay-to-win mobile game? Krunker has a very interesting story, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Krunker's journey begins with Sidney and Vince, two brothers that would compete with each other to make a better and better game. In 2016, Sidney would start his venture with browser games, releasing a game called Vertix.io, a top-down shooter which was unique for the fact that it had a chat feature. This would make the game feel a little bit more connected, and this was, the early elements of Sid introducing community into his games. With a strike of luck at this time, games like Agario and Slither were blowing up, so Sidney took advantage of this and created a game called Drifting.io, a game that he claims to have only made in 1 week as a personal challenge. Sid would go on to create a game called Doubloons.io, which he claimed to have only created in 4 days. And by the end of 2016, the few games that Sidney had made had amassed over 400,000 unique players. Pretty impressive, but it was about to get a whole lot better for Sid. In 2017, Yendis would form, a small team that would help Sidney put out a lot of these games and help update them. Yes, Yendis is just Sidney spelled backwards. Carnage was Yendis' first attempt at a 3D shooter. You can see early elements and reminiscence of what Krunker would soon to be, but Carnage had nothing on the next game that Sidney would release, because on March 9th, his biggest game yet would drop. Moo.io. This is probably the first game on the list that you may have heard of. It had its own wiki page and fandom. Yendis now had 5 games under their belt, and continuing to follow trends, Sidney would hop on the Battle Royale wave. Sidney would publish his own Battle Royale game called Foes.io, which would be received well, but nowhere near as good as Moo. And in 2018, Yendis would begin working on their final but best game yet. And on May 20th, Sidney would tweet out a semi-polished build of Krunker.io for people to come and play. And with a few fixes and changes, the game was fully unveiled on June 15th, 2018. In the beginning, it was very simple. One map, many classes like Revolver, SMG, but the favorite one was Sniper.
Kind of makes it hard to test the balance of everything if everyone's just playing fucking Hunter.
I'll switch.
There was even a class named after one of the developers, Vince, who would work on the models for the game while Sidney would focus more on the coding. Players were soon jumping around, remembering spawn locations, and quick-scoping each other in this novel FPS experience. This fun was facilitated by easy access, fast respawns, and big hitboxes, which made the game easy to enjoy for anybody. But it was limited, and there was definitely a lot that the devs would have to do and add for the game to be taken anywhere seriously. At the end of June, Moo would promote Krunker. This would bring an already existing community of browser players to the all-new and fresh 3D shooter called Krunker.
Oh, you bitch.
Sidney was determined and passionate to bring great updates and good content to this game, and he would begin doing that in July. They had rebalances to classes because everything was busted. They made the sniper movement faster because people like that fast-paced sniping. Basic leaderboards. They added a marksman class, which was so freaking broken. Voice chat, which made for some hilarious moments.
Bruh.
And all these things are great and would continue to push Krunker in the right direction, but nothing would keep people coming back as much as this next change would. Sidney, you cooked here, man. Crunkies and spins were added to Krunker. You could earn Crunkies simply by gaining points in game modes. And then after the game's finished, you could take those Crunkies and do spins on different kinds of wheels. It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows in the early days because there was a massive aimbot issue. We don't know much about the things that were done and put in place to stop cheaters because the devs wouldn't want to tell us this because then the cheaters would know. But Sid would theorize many ways to stop cheaters. He thought about having a code scrambler so that when the cheats were detected, the code of the game would change and it wouldn't be able to cheat. It was a very difficult time for these developers to try and figure out how to make a working anti-cheat in a browser game. And every update, they were continuously adding new measures, but then every update, the cheaters were getting better at cheating. This was a constant battle that would continue, but for now, it was a somewhat losing battle. Although there were cheaters, it is fair to say that there was a dedicated community behind Krunker already. By August, the Discord had 5,000 members. We had streamers like Mrs. Yibby playing with the community and introducing them to Krunker. And with this small influx of interest, Sidney decided to release the game editor, a basic map maker that would put the power of making maps into the players' hands, giving them the ability to make very simple maps with the tools that were given to them. It was a very simple tool in the beginning and people were just getting to grips with it, but soon they would be pushing the boundaries boundaries of what was possible with it. The map making era would be pushed by Vince as he would go on live stream and play custom maps made by the community. Shortly before, he would make a map competition announcing 50,000 Krunkies for the winner. Ultimately, it came down to 2 maps, Frost by Knockware and Sandstorm by Crispy Crust. If you've played Krunker, you'll know that Sandstorm was the one that won that map competition and is now a fan favorite. On the 27th of August, Map Makers of Krunker would be founded. This clan would bring a lot of interest into the map making scene as a whole. We saw another map enter the rotation as well with Littletown at this time, although it looks a little bit familiar. The Shipyard map was added for 1v1s, although this looks a little familiar as well. Krunker had a niche community by this point, and the map makers were pushing the boundaries of the editor with maps like Minecraftville, completely changing the look of the game. YouTubers were mainly posting like 360 and trickshot highlights at this point. Krunker would slowly pick up views organically, and more players would enter the game as it continued to evolve and update. And by the end of 2018, Krunker was a fast, fun-paced shooter that would bring you coming back with its gambling mechanics or its custom maps, and it can be played on any machine, even a school PC or a Chromebook. 2018 was a good year. It laid the foundation for Krunker, but what would come next in the beginning of 2019 would bring a lot more to the game. And no, it wasn't the announcement of cosmetics, although that was pretty cool. But on the 30th of January, the public release for Krunker would be pushed out, version 1, which may not sound like a big deal, but this brought a massive influx of eyes and viewer base.
But you guys have been asking me to play this game for like at least a month. Everybody's been saying, play Krunker, play Krunker, play Krunker. And now I've played it here and there, and I'm like, alright, it's not too bad of a game, but when I actually put a bit more time into the game and, you know, customize the FOV settings and, you know, really got accustomed to it, man, this game, it's solid. It is really, really good if you can get into the groove.
People really started to get interested in what was going on with the full release of Krunker and would make videos on it as it was a free-to-play fun game. Map making was great and the community was fun, but Krunker was missing something that made it unique, because right now it just felt like a CSGO clone on browser. But Sid had a vision and he continued to innovate. And on the 3rd of February, the streamer tab was added, which would bring a lot more people into these streams and encourage even more people to stream. And by people entering these streams, they would learn a lot more about the game and its community. Sid would focus on the overall game and Vince would be the head of skins, bringing in more skin makers from the community to help add new stuff. Berg 1v1s would begin to rise as people wanted to test their skills against others, and thus the comp scene would see its birth. Seeing this opportunity, Sid capitalized and would host 3v3 and 4v4 hardpoint competitive games for small prize pools of cash and crunkies. But nothing would propel the competitive scene more than what was about to release. In fact, nothing would propel Krunker more than what was about to release, because in version 1.1, the biggest change yet, sliding. A seemingly simple mechanic would have far-reaching consequences for what Krunker would do, making the game 10 times more unique and replayable than any other. So what did this slide do? Well, it allowed you to slide. But more importantly, this slide would create a slight speed boost, propelling you in the direction slightly. Players began to jump and slide, soon chaining these jumps and slides together to build up and maintain speed. This mechanic would soon be coined slide hopping. This allowed players to come back every single day and improve at the ever-growing skill gap. Although not easy, when achieved, you would be gliding around the maps and you would have a significant advantage over your opposition, who were usually playing on Chromebooks. The experience of gliding around the map and dinking heads, mixed with Krunker's simple but rewarding gameplay, made the game a very satisfying experience.
That shotgun is stupid.
Players like X and Brandor would soon rise as some of the best players in this early era. Nothing would garner more attention than when Brandor would face off against TSM Myth on live.
Fuck. Okay, I guess one kill didn't really count then, I'm gonna guess, right? What a flick, dude. Holy shit.
Unfortunately, Myth would lose this, not surprisingly, because of the movement diff. Soon after, a ton of streamers would start playing Krunker. We had Tfue try the game, we had Ewok play the game, and even Shroud, who dissed the game, but the devs included this small diss in Prop Hunt, which show their passion and dedication for just making something fun and their willingness to take a joke. With these streamers playing the game, the views and streamers for Krunker skyrocketed more than ever, with the amount of people streaming the game doubling, and hype continued to build around Krunker as leaks said that Keemstar would be hosting a massive tournament alongside the devs. This would also bring interest of FaZe Clan into the game, as the FaZe Clan would be founded and it would have members like Rain, Blaze, Kaz, Kazafy, Mitch, and many more. Having FaZe in this browser sniping game just really solidified it as something that was here to stay and grow. Because if FaZe were interested in Krunker, why wouldn't we be?
A skill gap to it once you learn how to move. So as you can see, like I'm like bunny hopping around and just like okay, that guy had no idea where I was. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. No!
Keemstar would later not host this tournament. FaZe Clan would cut their ties from the devs for unknown reasons and would no longer stream or upload the game. There's not much else we have on that, I'm sorry. And this would soon lead to the FaZe Clan being disbanded in game. I wish I knew what happened. I don't know. Sid used this opportunity and still hosted the tournament, but with a smaller cash prize. Sidney continued his role with the competitive scene and announced the weekly tournaments, with a prize pool of $600 for every region, which was pretty big and gave people a good incentive to grind and want to be a part of these tournaments. All-time search terms would peak, probably because of the amount of people streaming the game. Twitch viewers continued to rise with an average of 200 viewers and 20 live channels, which wasn't a lot, but it was organically growing. Frosty Wolf was one of the first and biggest. Not only was he entertaining and funny, he was great at the game and would educate people on how to get better. Sid would hint at multiple new ideas for the game and take suggestions from the chat as well, which showed a real dedication to the community and we really felt cared for. In July, we saw a drop in search terms, presumably from kind of the lack of content in the past 2 months, but it would soon peak again after the addition of the marketplace. Finally, those skins that you had been spinning, you could now sell on the marketplace to other players. And even better, you could save your crunkies and buy something you wanted if you didn't want to gamble for it. We saw Greek and Poke actually play the game at this time, which highlighted some of the major issues with Krunker.
Okay, I'm loading. Oh, nice, dude. It's not laggy at all.
Is it laggy? Turn on hardware acceleration.
Is this the quality of games you...
Dude, turn on hardware acceleration. I'll make it better.
Hardware acceleration.
It's on Google Chrome, advanced. Don't show on tool. On stream.
No, fuck
Go
you.
to really, dude.
No.
Really, dude.
Yeah. This is absolute fucking laggy trash.
It's not laggy for me. Because you're on fucking Windows 98.
Yeah, and you're on fucking... I'm on... What? You fucking cheater!
Although we like to believe that it was an easy game to get into as it was on browser, not only would you have to enable a certain setting on Chrome, you would also have to search through Krunker's enormous customization settings to try and figure out what was what. Many fans realized the game needed a default settings rework to get people through the door and playing. While it was simple to click into and play, the many customization settings were just too overwhelming, and the default settings were optimized for the worst of computers. So the game looked like this, but my game looked like this. But you wouldn't know how to do that if you had just launched up the game. With the increasing player skill, it was becoming apparent that you needed to customize the settings to enjoy the game. The hard part was knowing what to change in Krunker's ever long menu, so people would just copy streamers, obviously. In August, we had contrabands added to the spins, another reason for you to gamble away your crunkies and not spend it on the marketplace. And we also saw the addition of creator codes, which would give a very large percentage back to content creators if their code was used when the user was buying KR. And by big, I mean 20 to 40% of the purchase. The only other way that they were making money aside from crunkies was ads. Sorable would upload his first ever Krunker video, soon becoming very consistent in the community by uploading all content on the new updates. The community continued to push the game's boundaries of not only new maps and mods, but glitch spots and trick shots, montages and art. It was really fleshing itself out to be a really in-depth game, breaking the limits of what a browser game ever was or ever could be. Every few updates, there would be mentions of server optimizations, but players never noticed a change. The Undergrowth map would release and would become comp players' second favorite map, alongside the ranked mode being added so you could do 1v1s, 2v2s, and 4v4s. And also during this time in August, we saw the massive rise of Krunker unboxing videos. Now, the updates had been consistent up until this point, but nothing was really groundbreaking in the past few months. But we got leaks of a season 2 apparently coming to Krunker. This would be a fresh slate for the game. Hype grew as rumors speculated on this update to come out on November 9th. Players eagerly awaited the update. November 9th came. It was not season 2 yet. The community would be waiting a lot longer than they first thought for this new season of Krunker. Yendis would invite a new developer on board to help them push out Season 2. Hype continued to build for Season 2 as leaks pointed towards 700 new skins for the game, which is insane because there was only like 300 skins at this point. Players theorized all the possibilities for the future of Krunker. Moswe actually joined and helped with the comp side of Krunker, and the weekly prize pool would now be increased to $1,000 per region. That was a much nicer number to look at and would intrigue even more players. This meant hundreds of eyes every week, and these players would show up.
Void's dead, Memes is dead, Zane is dead.
Get some, let's
Got
get
him.
some of
2 down, 3 down, nice.
Got 3.
Holy shit, boys.
Those who delve deep enough into this browser game were starting to see the infinite customization, flourishing comp scene, and passionate community who helped push the game forward. This all contributed to Krunker players feeling united in this charming, dopamine-filled, movement-based block game. Season 2 was still not out, but Fright would be added, and verified clans would also be added to Krunker, highlighting some of the most prestigious clans in the game. The hype for the new season intensified, and search terms for Krunker surged as people delved deeper into this browser shooter. Every update brought bug fixes and etc., but now these updates seem to have stopped. What happened? Why did it all go quiet? Search terms were going up. They still are. How? But the silence broke on December 1st, where Sidney would greet the Reddit with this long thread. Sidney starts this post by apologizing to the community for not communicating. He states that he's ashamed of the current state of the game, and he knows that things like hackers and performance issues need to be addressed. He says that tomorrow he'll begin working a lot more again. He can push out an ELO system for competitive, and him and Vincent are still working on Season 2. They just really want to make sure all the new things are worth getting and look good, and that's why it's taking them so long. Sid sincerely apologizes for his 3 weeks of absence from the game and the lack of updates, and asks the community for their forgiveness, which they undoubtedly do give. This post demonstrated the toll that running a game like this would have on a small team, especially when you're the face of the game like Sid. With many players expecting constant updates to compete with other titles at the time like Fortnite, this would inevitably become backbreaking for Sid, as he would want to release the new season, but also would want to keep consistent content, and it was hard for him to balance that, from my perspective at least. On December 14th, he would greet the community again with another post. Sid not only stated that the new season of Krunker would be soon and not to worry, but also shared his visions for the future of the game. A big thing right now that's being worked on is transitioning the custom maps into custom games, so people can create their own games instead of just maps. So eventually, it will be possible to make in-game casinos, social hubs, racing games, side-scrolling platforms, and so much more. So Sidney and his team were really focusing on making a game editor, a game maker, where you could create experiences and maps, kind of like Roblox. They saw the potential in community-created content this early into the game, which was insane. With posts like this, players felt like they were in really good hands for the future, and discussions would fly about the potential of Krunker. Soon after this post, on the 22nd of December, Season 2 would finally release 700 new skins, a new customizable called the Dies, changes to ranked 1v1s, servers, and the map editor. Players saw this as a fresh start for Krunker to build off of. Soon, Krunker YouTubers were all doing unboxing videos on the new season, and by the end of the year, these YouTubers had amassed tens of millions of views. Krunker was really building itself out, but there was nothing massive with the intro of Season 2, so players were hoping that this would be sustained as the season would push on, and we hopefully wouldn't see another long period of silence again. Debatably the biggest, no, it's not debatable, it was the biggest year for Krunker.io, and we can probably all guess why. We saw a new remade map, and we saw a sword off be added, which at first got a lot of slack, but soon players realized the potential of the sword off for trick shots and speed boosts, and it became a whole new element of the game for people to have fun with. But people expected more from the new season of the game.
I played probably an hour of Krunker trying to get gameplay, and either it would take me a minute to load into a game, I would join a game that was empty, which is pretty normal, or I would just straight flat out get disconnected, which has never happened to me. Is Krunker dead? Simple answer is no. The reason for that is 10 to 20,000 active players are on constantly. Even at like the dead end of the night, we still have 5 to 10,000 people online. The issue is that the devs have neglected to update the game in quite a while. Like our last update was a month ago, and it was literally server fixes. That is it. Which is nice, but the servers aren't fixed. This update that is yet to come out, 2.0, was supposed to come out a week ago, 3 weeks ago, and we have yet to see it.
Fortunately for Krunker though, the community was there to carry the game once again. YouTubers like Konixo soared at this time, solely off uploading a few Krunker videos. Ranked parties were added so you could finally queue with your friends. People were desperate. It was March now, and we still didn't have any new content in the season other than a map and a shotgun. But finally, version 2.0 was pushed out and they brought us a brand new rarity, unobtainables.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
We also got challenge levels, Crunktitus. Now, obviously, this was the time where everyone was being locked indoors. So these updates couldn't have come at a better time. Billboards as well gave people a way to put their own messages up there. And finally, Krunker was expanding again. With more countries being locked indoors during 2020, interest in Krunker spiked as more people had time to explore the game. Greeting them were many new streamers, with 30 plus of them live at any given time. But before mid-April, unobtainables were removed from the spins, and it's very clear why. There were hundreds of unobtainables spun already, which shows that the devs severely underestimated the amount of people that were not only playing the game, but spinning their Krunkies. But with the removal of 2 spinnable unobs, they soon added a earnable unob called the Vertigo. With 150 eggs spawning around every map in the game, the first 5 people to find them would be rewarded with an unobtainable Vertigo. This was one of the most sought after and hyped up unobtainables in the entire game. It really brought the entire community together, other than EU that was asleep because it was at like 5 AM. Yeah, I'm still kind of mad. But for the EU people, it was fine because the day after they brought out Easter spins and one of the coolest items in the game, Egg Tamer. And they continued this theme of good cosmetics because unobtainables soon rejoined the game with the addition of RGB, but this time it was a 0.01% chance.
I've gotten jacked. Oh, unobtainable, unobtainable. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm not. I got RGB. I got RGB. I got RGB. I got RGB.
RGB and Vertigo really made unobtainables super sought after, which was great because on May 13th, trading would be added. And in the update after, trade lobbies where people could meet and trade their items with each other. Trading would undergo a lot of different changes throughout Krunker's lifespan, but if one thing's for certain, so many people kept coming back over and over again to build their inventories and get better items. The amount of people streaming and watching Krunker was slowly rising at this time, and nothing would have a better impact on this than the Destructoid tournaments. Destructoid would host tournaments with his viewers live on stream, and these would garner thousands of viewers. The most significant of which being when he got the 2 best streamers to play live on stream, Frosty versus StremZ. If you didn't know what Krunker was, it was a spectacle to watch the best players in the world, and if you were a part of the community, it was amazing to watch these 2 great players battle off against each other. But those 2 streamers wouldn't remain the best players for long, as the next update would bring out something that would improve everybody overnight. This update was slide control. Now, something I failed to mention was that Krunker's sliding, movement, and jumping was all FPS based. If you had 30 frames per second, you were at a significant disadvantage than someone with 100 or 1,000 frames per second. Because of the way the game was coded, you would actually be able to build up speed a lot easier if you had more frames. But slide control would make this completely obsolete. By the enabling of a simple setting, everyone had the emulated 1000 FPS. You could instantly turn sharp corners just by looking in that direction. There was no more sliding round the corner, it was snapping round that corner. And this change would begin to help so many people, especially those on worse computers, get so much better at Krunker. Soon after trading was added, by June, players saw the addition of Season 3. This brought, again, hundreds of new skins to the game, 2 new unobtainables being Antimatter and Disintegrator.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
A Kanji remaster, which was actually the best remaster in the game, in my opinion. And players, for the most part, were actually pretty satisfied with this, because trading had just released, so most people were pretty excited about the new skins and marketplace. Unfortunately though, during this time, Krunker's search terms were slowly dropping off, and it looked like this big Season 3 update wasn't as big as people hoped. Although, Krunker pushed on and done something massive for the community in July as they released their first ever Twitch drops. This would allow players to go on Twitch, watch streams, and get keys that they would then use to spin exclusive Twitch-themed items. This would be the first of many drop events for Krunker and was a great indication for how much the devs wanted to support content creators while also giving back to the community. Sid would be active not only on Twitch, but Discord and Reddit as well, give leaks, teasers, and even receive feedback from the community about Krunker. He really seemed like a guy that just wanted to please the community and make a game that people just really enjoyed. And in August, Sid would give back to the community with one of the best game modes ever released, Clan Wars. Clan Wars was a chance for your clan to compete against all the other clans in the game in the most unique way I've ever seen. There was a map with all the continents, and any clan could submit up to 50 players to send into that continent. Once the player's contract had started for that region, they had a few hours to get as many kills as they possibly could. The clan with the most kills would win that region, they would get a KR prize, and the devs soon promised that they would add even more rewards for Clan Wars. And by September, Krunker had somehow turned those search results around and re-spiked back up. Clan Wars was something that was really sustainable within the community, as every week it would just do its own thing and the players would play the game. Unfortunately though, not everyone would play legitimately and there would be a ton of cheaters. So to combat this, Krunker introduced the KPD, the Krunker Police Department. This was a select group of people that would answer to reports and watch and spectate players to see if they thought they were cheating, and if they were, they would be banned on the spot. The only problem with KPD though, is that the person could just make a brand new account and continue cheating. Yeah, hackers were a serious problem in this game. By October, Krunker done another amazing event for the community and released raids. Raids were a chance for you and 7 other players to battle through this dungeon-style, scary maze type game. And if you beat the boss at the end, you would have a chance to get one of the 2 rare contraband items. For the team that beat it in the fastest time, they would be rewarded with an unobtainable item, which brought even more hype to this game mode, and was honestly one of the best things that Krunker had ever done. Although it was an amazing event, it would unfortunately end tragically for the Krunker community. Due to disagreements between players and developers, the raid unobtainable would be delayed, meaning those that took part wouldn't know when they were going to actually get their reward, which made the Krunker developers look incompetent at their own game. Although they may have not been able to push it out because they were working on their next big announcement, and that would be FACEIT. FACEIT is a competitive platform that games like CSGO use to matchmake players up against each other. It's a very popular website and it has amazing anti-cheat and great servers. So with this being announced for Krunker, the competitive scene went wild. Krunker was on a roll, carrying their success from the year forward despite many people integrating back into school or work. The slow drop in search terms really didn't stop their stride, as by November, this streak would continue with the announcement of Survival. Leaks, teasers, and pictures would come out of this new mode. Devs would say very little about it, but we knew it was coming, and it would be the biggest mode for Krunker yet. It would essentially be Rust, but on a browser. And on November 15th, Krunker would come out with their Season 4 update. Can you guess what they added? That's right, a ton of new skins and not much else. By Season 4, players were annoyed that there were still no short-term grindables in the game. Yes, we had black market items like Nuke Tamer, but that was going to take a year for the regular player to get. Although the unobtainable for Season 4 was pretty damn hot. I meant the Scout's Honor. Following this, in late November, Frosty would announce his departure from Krunker.io. As one of the biggest Krunker streamers, this had a massive impact on the community, with his reasoning being that he didn't like how much drama there was in the Krunker community, and quite frankly, he was getting sick and tired of the Krunker kids in his chat. It was too much BS for Frosty to handle, and he wanted to focus more on his own community, so that's what he would do for a very long time. It was a very weird time for the game. A lot of people missed Frosty, but Krunker pushed on and pretended like it never happened. And it would be pretty easy for the devs to forget this, as they had a massive event with a bunch of new streamers. This was a charity event with the Misfits, a massive group of YouTubers and streamers coming over to play Krunker live on stream for a good cause. This charity event not only brought new eyes to Krunker, but raised thousands of dollars. It was a great spectacle, not just to see these streamers playing the game, but to see the community of Krunker band together for a good cause. By December, it was becoming clear that these new seasons were not pushing out or bringing any of the content that we really wanted or needed for the game. game. A new season would come out, we would wait a while, there would maybe be a little bit of content, then it would go quiet, and then we'd get a new season. And it was a cycle that really wasn't helping itself. So the devs decided to hire 3 new developers to help out with the workload. And one of the most controversial things they done in December was the start of IP bans. Do you remember how I said if you get banned by the KPD, you could just make a new account? Well, Krunker was actually putting a stop to this, so when you would get banned, it would be a hard IP ban, so no one on your internet could connect to the game. This would cause massive uproar, as those that knew Krunker.io knew that a lot of people were playing it at school. So if one kid cheated, that was 100 players gone. Krunker devs had no choice but to push on with the IP bans, as they couldn't let cheaters just continue to make new accounts. The game has come a really long way in the past 2 years. With the addition of so many new features, a ton of new community members and streamers, there was huge potential for Krunker to be the next big online platform. But for the devs to please all members of the community and bring everything together into one cohesive game with no issues was going to be a challenge, which would be highlighted by UCD at the end of 2020 as he addresses all the major concerns with the game. From hackers to lag, to monetization, to transparency. The next year was going to be a very tough one for the Krunker developers, but they would be sure to try and please people like UCD, as their opinions were very valued for the game. So that brings us to 2021. Let's discuss how Krunker handled these issues throughout this year. The casual versus dedicated argument was a good one, as there were so many different people to please in the Krunker community. They added map drops for these casual players, but they were very lackluster and most people barely even knew they existed as they were so rare. And additionally, for the casual players, the mobile client would release on April 7th. Which would allow more people to access Krunker. The hacker issue we've spoken a lot about. They continuously added more KPD officers throughout 2021 and implemented a system for people to apply for KPD. Lag and server issues were an ongoing problem for Krunker. Server optimizations were consistently mentioned in the patch notes, but nothing major was done in the year of 2021 to go ahead and fix or address these server issues at all, other than the addition of FACEIT, which we'll get into later. Monetization was a massive issue for Krunker, as KR was slowly becoming more inflated. It was becoming less worthwhile to spend $100 to get 60,000 Krunkies. So to combat this, Krunker would introduce bundles towards the end of 2021 in hopes of generating a little bit more revenue, which players hoped would be put back into the game. It was a tricky process to get the game approved on Steam, but on February 1st, the game would officially release. The hardcore Krunker players would celebrate, as they thought this would bring a whole new wave of people to the game. And while yes, being on Steam was a big step for the game, there really wasn't that many people that were finding it through Steam. Additionally, the Steam client was not a very good client to play the game on compared to other ones. The Steam client itself was almost no different from other clients. If anything, it was slightly worse. Huge waves of players would come at the beginning of a season, but would vocalize themselves leaving. It felt like every other week you would see a twit longer about how another person is quitting. So what did the devs do? They went on Twitter and memed on them all, of course. Sponsorships and advertisements is something that Krunker really hadn't done much of up until this point, so when they sponsored Anomaly, this was massive for the game. As Anomaly had already played Krunker on his Twitch stream, his video came across even more genuine, and it boasted over 2.1 million views, which would bring great attention to Krunker. But if all of the other issues aren't being addressed correctly, then what hope is there for the game? Speaking about hope for the game, the roadmap would be added and players would be hopeful that these deadlines would be met. We saw promises of survival, battle royale, scripting, ranked rework, and much more. But by midway through the year, every single one of these deadlines had come and gone, and not a single thing on the roadmap had been met. Not one. By this point, certain players were furious with the developers and outrage would ensue. As a response to this, the devs would just delete the roadmap and say nothing. Probably not the best way to deal with the community. But the game showed real potential with its movement and map maker that players were just desperate for the updates to come out. The Krunker devs would try and soften the landing of some of the recent mishaps by bringing out a KR package, a new Twitch drop event, and a massive $50,000 map competition. Not only this, but the devs announced that they were working on Season 5 and that would be out in a month. Players expected a lot from Season 5 at this point. Because they had gone so long without content, they expected survival, they expected FACEIT, they expected a good anti-cheat. Alongside this map competition was the announcement of scripting, the ability for people to code any kind of game they wanted inside of Krunker. This tool wasn't out yet, but it was something that the devs were beginning to work on, while also using the map competition to promote their editor. The map competition brought some absolute absolutely astonishing games to Krunker. I'm talking SpongeBobbing Krunker, but it was only the map competition that was getting people to work so hard on these maps. The devs hoped that this map competition would shine a light on how great the editor was, so that when they released KrunkScript, coders would come over and make great games. But unfortunately, that's not quite what happened, as shortly after KrunkScript released on July 1st, it would soon be disabled due to some unknown issues. In fact, KrunkScript would be used so little after its release that the devs would have to pay a developer to make a unique game on it to continue to show it off. Sid would rejoin Krunker Bunker and give a massive reassurance for everything that was to come.
Hey guys, so it's been a while since I've posted any updates here. Firstly, we are aware of the server issues and are looking into it ASAP. FACEIT will go into beta very soon, and this has to be addressed before then. Once that's out and polished, our whole focus will be directed at the core Krunker experience and all things that come with it. Daily challenges, proper friend system, new maps, new modes, clan rework, permanent raid mode, and more. We are currently overhauling the KPD system to provide the KPD with better tools to detect and combat the hackers. On a personal note, I understand your grievances with the game, but I strongly believe the changes we are working on will make for a much better experience in the long run. It is difficult to try to balance all the different parts of the community, mapping, comp, pub stompers, casual players, content creators, but we will get there. My vision for Krunker is that we can have an online platform where anyone can create or play games with their friends, and also have a thriving comp scene and solid core FPS experience. I apologise for the lack of communication and my personal absence in the community. I know we can get the game to the best state it's ever been in within the next 3 months, and I suck at ETAs, so I'm scared to give any precise dates for any of the things I talked about, but just know we are working hard on it. Appreciate all you guys. Sid.
This post brought a lot of hope to the community, as Sid was really showing signs of wanting to bring the game to new heights. Sidney states something very important here, which is that his vision for Krunker is to have an online platform where anyone can create or play games with their friends, while also having a thriving comp scene and a solid core FPS experience. Sid's vision for the game had real potential, and players had hope that throughout Season 5, these updates would all come together to bring Krunker to new heights.
Before Season 2 came out, we had a 2-month span without any updates or dev communication at all. And then Season 2 came out, and we were promised all of this stuff, and then another 2 months without any communication, updates, etc. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is an issue. So I talked about it, community gathered together, and everything got fixed. But I think it's so interesting to me right now that Krunker is in a decline, because even though it might not seem like it, we're about to have more content than we've ever had before. You guys know this, but they've actually been working on scripting for literally ever, which is the stuff with the new custom games, which I think is going to be massive, and it's already really cool. They've also been working on FACEIT. Those two things alone have pretty much postponed any updates coming out for the game. And now that those things are more or less out, we're already starting to see more and more content come into the game. We've had 2 new maps come out. We had a new game mode come out, and that's just the beginning. And the reason I'm saying all this is it's just so crazy to me that so many people are quitting right now when like things are about to get good. Like for the past few months, you guys have stuck through everything, right? No updates, nothing whatsoever. Like quality of life updates, but no content updates. As soon as we start getting stuff, you're like, you know what? I'm done, and you just leave. I understand it's frustrating.
With search terms at all-time lows since 2019, the Krunker devs really needed to work fast to push out content. And content they did, with Season 5 being the biggest content release we have ever seen for a season. In September, Season 5 brought a ton of new things to the game, like the junk system, a bunch of new cosmetics, a new raid event, a new trade server, a new badges system, and all of this was a great start to Season 5, probably one of the best starts we had to a new season yet. Unfortunately though, this would not last very long, as clan wars would be discontinued in this update, as one clan would be steamrolling the clan wars every single week. The Dutchman unobtainable item that would be the incentive for playing the new raids would be bugged out after just a few days, and no one would be able to unlock it. This was confirmed by the devs, who later claimed it to be fixed when it wasn't, and wouldn't actually fix the issue till almost 1 year later. I don't know if that was just an oversight or they thought it was actually fixed, but that's the reason why there's so few Dutchman unobs in the game. The junk system was a great effort to bring new grinds into the game, but unfortunately, for the most casual players, getting any kind of junk item was going to be impossible. You would pick up 0.01 junk around the map. Quick selling a Contra would give you 2.5 junk. Completing challenges might give you 0.1 junk, and to craft a rev you needed 180. So again, this was really missing the short-term grind that Krunker needed for these kind of players. Season 5 looked really promising, but ultimately had a really rocky start. But what about FACEIT, KrunkScript, Battle Royale and Survival? Krunker did try their best though with the new challenge system, bringing in daily challenges with small rewards, and map-specific challenges as well as weapon-specific challenges. These brought new camos for the real grinders that would be able to get double nukes. But again, most of these challenges were too hard for the average player or not worth it enough to even look at. And finally, by October, FACEIT was finally entering its beta stages of testing. Competitive players from the community were finally getting their hands on with the new FACEIT system, and they were amazed. The veto pick system looked good, the comp layout looked completely different, the match timer was new, the class pick system looked cool. It was an amazing ranked rework. And the servers, right? They had higher tick rates, the devs said. All right, let me check this. So our normal tick rate is 8. So the server tick rate here is 10. The Krunker devs upped the tick rate of the server by 2. You don't have to be a genius to know that that's not very much. Although Techie would try to convince himself that it felt better. And by December 4th, Ranked Season 1 would finally release for everybody. Over a year after its announcement, FACEIT was finally playable. It was pretty obvious that there was an issue though, because 4 stacking was a serious problem in FACEIT, and you would be restricted to only queuing in parties of 2, which would reduce FACEIT to what I call Battle of the Bots. See, Krunker would try to matchmake you in the fairest game possible, and the only way it ever seemed to do that was to pair 2 good players against 2 good players and 2 bad players against 2 bad players. Who could carry the new players the most, basically. But despite this, people still really enjoyed queuing up with their duos and finally getting a full comp experience, regardless of the servers. And just as all of this was going on with FACEIT, the most popular streamer at the time, StremZ, would be banned from Krunker. This would be alleged to him selling and buying skins, which was not allowed in Krunker. This was somebody that played the game every day, was the highest level in the game, and would pull the most viewers on Twitch, easily. So him being banned on the game definitely had a significant impact on the community. Now, if giving away his Frostbite wasn't a big kick in the balls, this definitely would be, with the announcement of NFTs, Metaverse, and the integration with crypto. Krunker devs announced that they would be selling NFTs, plots of land in the Metaverse, and also would allow you to list your unobtainables and contrabands on the Ethereum market to be sold for real money. As soon as this came out, traders went frantic. As Ethereum logos were added to the bottom right of all their items, players theorized exactly how much they would be able to sell these kind of things for. But before that, the devs would release a set of exclusive one-of-one golden plated NFTs for every gun in the game. This was done in an auction style, selling to the highest bidder. Unfortunately, 14 of 17 of those were bought by one guy.
0.6. I never stood a chance.
Krunker would not learn their lesson, would do another one of these auctions for 5 watches that would be bought by one guy. This guy spent over $100,000 on Krunker NFTs so that he could have the first and exclusive ones. What an idiot, am I right? Players eagerly awaited the crypto update, hoarding their unobtainables and refusing to downgrade them for anything cheap. By the end of 2021, the amount of people streaming the game was down. By the beginning of 2022, people really didn't know what to expect from Krunker. There were still major issues that needed to be addressed. There were prominent figures in the community begging for change. Players were really unsure of the direction of the game. There were many things that needed to be changed, many things that needed to be addressed. By May, understandably, many people were losing hope for the game. Krunkscript had no good games coming out. There were still server issues and cheaters. You were still getting killed round corners in comp, but that didn't stop many people from enjoying FACEIT. And that's why this next announcement would be make or break for Krunker. Sidney announced that Yendis and all of its games, including Krunker, had been acquired by a large game studio named FRVR. This was astonishing news to the community, as they really did not see this coming. Sidney goes on to explain how this will affect the game and its community. He assured everybody that the main things he was working on with this acquisition was bringing new developers and technicians to Krunker that could really push the game in a great direction. For example, communication with content creators. With many players losing hope over the course of the past year, this was looking like just what Krunker needed to continue to push their game forward and get it into a better state all around. With a big focus on map making, the future was big for Krunker by the sounds of it, with new engineers that could work on the game and improvements to the editor, which would finally allow some great games to come up with Krunker and possibly turn it into that online platform that Sid has visioned about. Understandably, during this time, we would see very little changes throughout the game, which gave the community plenty of time to research FRVR and get pretty curious at what their intentions were. Players found out that FRVR was a mobile company that primarily made Facebook games like Basketball or this Gold Digger game, with apparently their best one being this Minecraft clone that really isn't that impressive. Players would wonder why specifically this company would acquire Krunker and why exactly Sidney would say yes. Players soon found out that FRVR had been invested in for $76 million and they were supposed to use this money to acquire a game. Everyone had faith that it was the best for the game though. Surely 120 new staff would allow Krunker to be worked on so much more and bring out updates so much quicker. How could this massive investment not be a good thing? There would be a small Reddit Q&A where Sidney and Brian, the CEO of FRVR, would answer people's questions and concerns.
Where do you see the future of Krunker content creation heading?
Direct partnership with content creators is important to us. It's one of the most important things to me personally, actually. For map and mod creators, there are a lot of exciting things as well. In general, the game will see a lot more players, which will give more gameplays and views for all content creators.
After asking around, there seems to be some confusion around the specifics of the deal. Is FRVR acquiring Yendis as a whole, or just the rights to Krunker?
FRVR acquired the rights to Krunker and made a deal with the team to join FRVR as an independent first-party studio. What that means is that they now work for FRVR, but as their own unit with creative control of Krunker. In practice, they'll continue working as they have, but now they're working closely together with the FRVR team. We would be idiots if we thought we can roll in and build Krunker better than the team that made it what it is. We don't want to mess with the magic, but rather give the core team the support of the much larger FRVR team and see how far they can take it.
What will you be doing about hackers?
This is still something that we need to nail down on the roadmap. We have plans for improving KPD and anti-cheat. The KPD system's super important for FRVR as well. We have a lot more engineering resources now to commit to this as well. So a dedicated anti-cheat developer is not out of the question.
And by June, FRVR was ready to push out their first update, which made the font completely unreadable. And they removed zero ADS, which was a beloved feature by the community. It allowed you to just shoot without actually aiming in, which makes no sense as they had no plans for competitive. While many were congratulating Sid and were very proud of him for making such a bold move, many hardcore players of the game were very concerned about his involvement with the game. Despite this though, July would reach and we would see a new LTM come out in the game. This mode was absolutely terrible. It was awful. They added 1 week of double XP to kind of celebrate this whole thing. And it was at this point that the unobtainable that was added 10 months ago in the raid was finally re-enabled. FACEIT would have new seasons and new leaderboards every few months. And by this point, we were in season 4 of FACEIT. Players were actively competing, streaming, practicing for tournaments, and the comp community were pretty suffice for themselves, aside from the cheaters, obviously. FACEIT wasn't a perfect anti-cheat, but it really was much better than what they had in the base game. But unfortunately, due to a disagreement between the FACEIT devs and the Krunker devs, the partnership between FACEIT and Krunker would be no more. And just like that, in a random update in July, the ranked queue would disappear. Players like Barry B, who were daily grinding this ranked queue, would quit the game at this point, as there was nothing left for players like this to continue playing. This single-handedly hurt the comp community more than anything ever would. But hey, at least we saw another limited time mode. This one just as bad as the last. With FACEIT being removed, there was slowly becoming less reason to keep coming back outside of Krunker's unique movement and community. By October, FRVR would listen to the community and start pumping money into advertisements. Yippee! The community understandably salty at FRVR for some of their decisions, but were still willing to give these guys time to adapt. It was clear that FRVR had a lot of work cut out for them, from fixing the editor to bringing back comp to consistently feeding the ever-demanding community. Shortly after this, on November 23rd, a new season would release Season 6, with a battle pass that costed $8, I think. I don't remember because I bought it so fast. The battle pass had great looking items, introduced a new mechanic called tickets, which would allow you to spin either heroic or boosted heroic spins, new map rewards that were instantly forgotten about, and a new weapon that was instantly dropped for being so bad. I mean, whose idea was a gun that you charge up? Oh, I see why this was added. Because it wasn't made for Krunker. It was made for the other mode that was added in Season 5, Zombies. That's right, Krunker now had zombies. This mode brought a new unobtainable for the most dedicated players that were willing to reach round 100. But unfortunately, just like almost every other grind, it was ruined. Because of one team abusing glitches and getting round 100 unfairly, the developers would have to disable this unobtainable temporarily. Although after fixing the glitch that would allow you to cheat, the unobtainable was never re-added back to the game, therefore instantly killing any reason to play zombies within the first week of it coming out. The beginning of Season 6 was a bit of a mixed bag. The Battle Pass was great and a good reason to come back, but players couldn't help but notice some weird changes in the game, such as the double XP button when you end a game, allowing you to watch an ad to get double XP. Some of these changes felt a lot like a cliche mobile game. By the end of November, Sidney would go again onto Discord and reassure the community that good things were to come. He states that Season 7 won't take nearly as long as Season 6 took to come out, and before Season 7 we can expect several updates. On top of this, he says a major Krunk script update is around the corner, and probably my favorite quote from Sidney de Veries ever: "This year has been rocky, but 2023 will be the year that Krunker is back on top." What happened in 2023, the year that Krunker was supposed to be back on top? Well, they started out by adding an esports tab, referencing that they would be bringing back some sort of competitive mode, as there was no ranked queue in the game at all at this time. It was becoming clearer to even the average Krunker player that the base game needed lots of work. Many of these issues in Krunker, like input failed 3, would continue to get worse, and there were many other limitations caused by the messy code. And for the game to ultimately reach the vision that Sidney had in early 2020, the entire game would have to be redone from head to toe. By February, the 90-day timer that was on the top of the Season 6 Battle Pass was extended, and was almost no surprise to anybody who was playing the game at this point. To fix some of these grievances with the community, Sidney would start a Q&A, and it would be really nice to see him go on YouTube and answer some questions.
What direction are you trying to go with Krunker? I understand that you're trying to make the game bigger through mobile, but there hasn't been too much update and content updates regarding PC gamers.
So initially that was a big focus for us after the merger with FRVR, to put a lot more focus on mobile, because it is a good way to get new users in. We did recently decide to split the focus so we could focus more on the .io and mobile side separately. There is now 2 teams working in parallel on both versions, which means that the original founding team plus a few additional developers are now focusing purely on Krunker.io, which will mean a lot more content for the .io web players. You'll see that in Season 7. We have a lot of things planned that are purely content focused, like a clan overhaul, new raid, and a lot of new things like that. So we look forward to putting that out.
So the next question comes from Moon, or Moon Juice, and that is, the Season 5 announcement mentioned a big focus on increasing the player base. As we near the end of Season 6, what progress has been made?
No progress has been made on growing the player base.
Wait, what?
And by April 23rd, Season 7 would drop with a new battle pass, this time with no timer. Raids would be pushed back a week from the season's release. We got more map rewards, a ton of new skins and unobs as always. I mean, realistically, these skins never missed. Sky Temple was reworked, and honestly, it became so much more playable. They added a new map called Clockwork, which was mid. Oh yeah, and body and back items were separated in this season for more customization. Sick. Oh, I need Krunker Premium for that. Wait, that costs money now? That's right, the community were furious that once a KR paid system was now requiring real money. It's clear that the bundles and battle passes that they were releasing weren't pushing the game forward in the direction players had once hoped. Many were wondering when FRVR were going to step up and put that investment money to good use, to make big improvements to the game, as it was in dire need of an overhaul in many aspects. Sid would remain a part of Yendis, but ultimately it seemed like he had very little interaction with the game. Players were noticing that the promises that Sid has made in some of the Q&A videos were never ending up in the game. People began to lose trust in the one person who put the most into this game. Speaking of trust, what happened to NFTs? Wait a second, did they remove the crypto icons? Krunker devs basically rug-pulled us. They auctioned off exclusive NFTs to be used in-game. They told us we were getting a metaverse where you could buy a plot of land and put whatever you want on it, as well as the ability to sell your own skins on this marketplace. And none of this ever happened. FRVR was supposed to have a big interest in the metaverse as well, but I guess they're only interested in it when it's popping. The extra workload was nowhere to be seen, and players needed consistency the most. On top of this, there was no communication from anyone at FRVR on any of these issues. And on the 9th of May, probably the best update that had dropped since the acquisition, a new die and the feature to spin 10 times. This was a feature that was originally created for FRVR's Facebook Krunker game that was ported to IO. Wait, Facebook Krunker game? Krunker's on Facebook? When did this come out? Wait, why is that so expensive? Oh my god, that ad is loud. Why can't I slide? Wait, what is this? How much HP do I have? You can buy armor and damage buffs? This is where the investment had been going? The Facebook editor is easier to use than Scratch. This is Krunker with downgraded features, no sliding, and $100 bundles. And you mean to tell me this is where FRVR have been putting their efforts and money? No wonder. No wonder. There was severe anger from the core Krunker community that FRVR were putting their focus on this Facebook version of the game. It would be understandable if they used this to grow the player base of Krunker.io, but it would not be understandable if it was to the detriment of what got Krunker here in the first place. The accessibility from any browser without an account, the movement, the community, the customization, all stripped away and put behind a paywall. Once the core community caught wind of what FRVR had been doing, a statement was put out ensuring players that both sides of the game were being worked on. Unfortunately, this was far from the truth. As over the next few months, more bundles would release to Krunker.io to suck the money out of the remaining player base, and FRVR continued to only update and work on their Facebook version of the game that would soon be ported to Discord. This partnership with Discord shows the true potential of how far Krunker could have reached and would have brought a whole new player base to the game. It's just a shame that nobody will ever appreciate Krunker if the FRVR version is all they know. It takes out everything that made the game so magical. Over the following months, FRVR continued with the lack of updates for .io, and the only person who we really felt was working on the game anymore was Techie. In fact, it's very probable that he was the only one working on the game, adding the multi-spins and new skins, changes to zombies, etc. Krunker was on its last legs. Techie himself even admitting that he just wants to keep working on the game because he loves it and didn't want to let it go. But soon, even Techie would announce a break from the game, leaving it with almost nobody left working on it. It was almost like Techie saw what was coming next. On July 11th, High Noon announced his final days with Krunker. This was somebody who worked behind the scenes of KPD and Discord, meaning KPD would no longer be active. Alongside this announcement soon followed Vince, who announced he would also be leaving Krunker. This sent the community into mass panic, as over the course of the next 24 hours, every skin maker and map maker would essentially be fired and no longer commissioned to work on Krunker.io. Over the next 2 days, it was mass hysteria in the Krunker community, some calling it the end of Krunker.io, while others were still hopeful. But there wasn't much hope left, because on July 13th, Krunker would come out with an official statement, basically announcing the departure of Noon and K-Pow, as well as Vince and Dom. They also stated if the player numbers were able to go up, they would put new KPD measures in place, but it is an absolute confusion as to how numbers would go up if they weren't actually updating the game. Merely days after this post stating that Vince and Dom were going to stay here until 2024, Vince would officially announce that he would be leaving Krunker within a week. And this is where everything continued to crumble. The game would not only lose the devs and the map makers, but also the community and the content creators that would make it what it is. And just like that, in a matter of a few days, those who once enjoyed Krunker or had any hope for the game's future had to move on. Yes, the game would still be playable, but with ongoing server issues and the lack of KPD, it would slowly dissolve into an unplayable state. So where is Krunker now? Over 6 months with no major content updates or anything for that matter, aside from the frickin' boulder, which I'm just not going to talk about. Why was this added? How was this added? Who knows? It done nothing. All they had to do was hire some devs and polish the game to the point where the Krunker community would have continued the rest on. Almost like the Geometry Dash or Gmod community community. But I guess it's much easier and more profitable to manage a predatory pay-to-win downgrade of the game. After months of silence and nothing happening with Krunker, most people had accepted the game's fate. But just in case you didn't, FRVR made it very clear with their most recent update, because just a few days ago from recording this video, they would randomly drop 300 skins into the game, which would sound like a very positive thing, until you realize these were the skins that were commissioned over a year ago and were designed for Season 8. Not only this, but the only way to obtain these skins was by either buying the bundle or buying the battle pass. This essentially confirmed that there was never going to be a Season 8 in Krunker, and officially marked the end of the game. FRVR really rubbed salt into the wounds of Krunker players just by sucking money out with these bundles, and even worse, putting to use great skins just for their own monetary gain, just like they've been doing this whole time. I mean, if you look at FRVR Facebook, they're literally charging you $100 for legendary skins that would have been a few hundred KR in the base game. What a waste of potential. Again, the core Krunker gameplay was so addicting. Sid's vision for the game to be an online platform had huge potential. The community could have made so many great things out of this game, but no. Corporate BS, money-hungry boomers ruined it. But don't worry, guys, because 2023 will be the year that Krunker is back on top. Thanks for that one, Sid. Well, I hope the boomers will have fun walking around with their pay-to-win gear.